Our guest today, his name is Eric Hurlock. Eric is the host and producer of the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp podcast. Lancaster Farming Newspaper has been the premier source for agricultural news in the Mid-Atlantic region for generations. Following in that tradition, the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp podcast is a resource for hemp farmers and producers, as well as industry professionals and advocates. Eric recently took the show on the road, traveling the U.S. for 6 weeks with his family in an RV, visiting hemp farms and businesses from Pennsylvania to Oregon and back again in an effort to shine a light on the grain and fiber side of the industry. Eric believes that the long-term potential of the hemp plant is in the industrial applications and that if grown at a large enough scale can help mitigate climate change. His podcast has won several Keystone News Media Awards and was a finalist in the International News Media Association's Global Media Awards for Best Use of Audio. Eric, other than that miraculous trip that Stephen and I are both really jealous of, we're honored to have you. Thank you for joining us today on Understanding CBD.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Max. It's great to be here. Appreciate the invitation to join you today.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I'm sure you're excited to be here, and I would imagine you might still be in shock after pulling off this tour with your family.
Yeah, I mean, we got home over a week ago, but I feel like I just got home yesterday. It's still, I've sort of gotten used to my house not shaking.
So your kids, you have 2 kids, boys, girls?
2 daughters.
2 daughters. Okay, wow. This. All right. Okay, so I'm curious. I got a question. I have 2 kids, one of each, but the question is, on their trip, were they aware, and how old are they, you said?
12 and 10.
Oh, geez. Okay, so teenage girls. Almost teenage. Right, nowadays they grow up faster, don't they?
I think so.
Did they recognize what an epic journey they were on, or are they too young to realize the magnitude, like how awesome this trip is?
I think they understood that it was pretty epic. They had a lot of people along the way tell them how epic it was. Mm-hmm. It's like, kids, you're not going to maybe understand this for years, but this is a big deal. Yeah, I mean, they I think they understand, or they will.
So maybe like when they started out, were they, excited, or were they
Definitely
sort of like,
excited because we had places, we were going to go to Dollywood in Tennessee. We were going to, hopefully see the redwoods in California. So we had sort of like, treats lined up for them along the way. Not quite bribes, but, awesome places that they knew they were going.
Have you done anything like this before?
Not with the family, no.
Okay.
As a young, college dropout, I did travel in an RV with my brother's band in the capacity as a roadie, but that's like 26, 27 years ago. But as a family, no, we've never been like campers. We've never, we like to go to the beach. We like to stay at hotels. So this was very different for our family. And it was great. We learned a lot about each other, or a lot about ourselves, and a lot about how big America is and how much it has to offer. And we met so many great people along the way. So I think for like that part for my kids alone was great. Everywhere we went, there was somebody who was just showing us absolute kindness, and yeah, it was a great way to see America.
Well, that's awesome, man. Congratulations for pulling that off. That's quite a thing to do for your family and kids.
Yeah, I
sure.
think epic is the right way to describe that.
Agree.
Yeah, I mean, sure. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't all
sure
sunshine and roses.
What is, right?
My youngest,
what is, Eric?
Well, I want to talk about something. So, and we'll get into the trip, and we'll talk about all the sunshine and roses and all the non-roses. But I want to talk. So, besides taking this epic trip, I mean, I'm learning about this Lancaster Farming Newspaper, which seems pretty epic in itself. I mean, we're talking about generations. I mean, this is known as the New York Times of farming. So how did you get started? How did you start this newspaper? Tell us the story there, if you wouldn't mind.
Oh, well, I certainly didn't start the newspaper. It was started in Lancaster in 1955. And it was a small paper at first, and it's grown over the years. We started in Lancaster, and now our reach is up and down the East Coast. I think we've got about 65 to 70,000 subscribers. And it's also on newsstands. And it's a big, fat newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
Like usually now when you see a newspaper, it's a flimsy little thing. But no, this is like old school newspaper. It's got usually 4 to 5 sections, a lot of which are classified ads and ads from equipment manufacturers. And it's like everything a farmer is looking for.
Is it made out of hemp?
Find in the Lancaster Farming. Not yet, but we're having those conversations. I would love to see the paper printed on hemp paper.
So
we're not there yet.
So at the magazine, when you started there, when did you, or how did the podcast come out of that?
Sure. Well, I started as the digital editor about 6.5 years ago. And, I took care of the websites and I did social media and whatnot. And, there's always discussion about reaching new audiences. And at one point, somebody talked about farmer radio. Like, could we produce a radio show? Could we produce 24 hours of radio content? And I sort of raised my hand in that meeting and like, how about a podcast? Wouldn't that be sort of more accessible? And everyone looked at me like, what's a podcast? So there was some education I had to do. But, it was my side job at this point because I had other things to do for the websites and everything. But I started publishing. It was short podcast. I thought originally it would be about lots of different aspects of agriculture. If you listen to my very first introduction episode, I talk all about like all the things. But the very first, like episode 1, I started on hemp, figuring that I would talk about hemp for maybe 6-8 episodes. But once I got in there, I just started talking to people, and there was always more people to talk to, more things to learn about hemp, more information I can share with listeners, because at that point, and even now to some extent, there's like a dearth of information for farmers about growing hemp. So I wanted to help provide, to be a resource.
Right, and you started this before the Farm Bill, right? You started in early 2018, right?
I published first episode the end of August 2018.
Okay.
And the Farm Bill was like supposed to be signed by the end of September, but it didn't get signed until December of that year. So, I had a few episodes in, and that was part of my discussions, like, hey, the Farm Bill was supposed to be signed, what next? So I was able to talk to, lawyers and policymakers, and it was just a lot of fun in those early days leading up to the Farm Bill. And then once it was signed, everything changed.
So you get this epiphany and you're like, I got to get in an RV. I got to convince my family to go on this epic hemp road trip with me. And somehow you convinced them. And really, what was the goal of this overall road trip?
My goal was to sort of connect the dots of the different sort of supply chains that are developing throughout the country on the fiber and grain side of it. I know you guys are CBD folks, and I love CBD, but I think the long-term potential of the hemp plant is in the fiber and grain, like the industrial applications. So I had gone on a sort of a smaller hemp tour last year, just to a few farms in Pennsylvania, and some listeners out west who have a hemp company. They like the show, but they reached out after that and wanted to sponsor our show. And that's a company called IND Hemp. They're from Montana. And then so in conversations with them about sponsoring the show, the president of IND Hemp, Ken Elliott, he's like, oh, we would love for some of this sponsorship money to, put Eric out on the road next year, do a bigger tour. And that planted the seeds in my mind, like, okay, let's do this. And I sort of put a rough itinerary plan together, and I took it to my editor, fully expecting him to say, that's great, Eric, but no, that's crazy. But he was like, interesting, and he took it to the president, and Pete liked it, and he took it to his boss, and there's great support because we do want to reach new audience. And I think all of us know that, we support farmers at Lancaster Farming, and this is, while it's not like a sexy story, it is a really important story for farmers and how, in my opinion, how they're going to save the planet. So I have great support from the folks at Lancaster Farming, and yeah, we made it happen.
So let's get to it. What's your beef with CBD, man?
All right, look, man, it's not a beef. I kind of see CBD as a distraction from like the big paradigm shifting potential of the hemp plant, right? So, but let me first say I am a CBD user. I have arthritis in my hip, and I find great relief from CBD. I think all cannabinoids are a gift from God. I think, it's just a miracle that there's this plant that produces these compounds that line up so well with the human body and like the endocannabinoidal system.
Wow, you're getting scientific on us now, Eric.
You throwing out those big terms.
We don't have a acetaminophen system in our body, right? We don't have a Tylenol system. We have an endocannabinoid system. So I don't have a beef with CBD per se. I guess my beef is with how that industry sort of like came out and was big and made all of these promises to a whole lot of farmers who put a lot of risk into it and lost a lot. Here in Pennsylvania, it was like, it was probably everywhere, but like the green rush. And there's still guys who trying to sell their 2019 crop of CBD. Farmers were promised insane prices for like $50,000 an acre of good CBD. And at one point, maybe that was happening. But so my beef is that it's left a bad taste in the mouths of farmers. And we need farmers to be supportive of hemp because without farmers, we have no hemp industry, right? So that was sort of the point of the road trip, was to shine a light on this other side of it, like the grain and the fiber, the big ag, big agriculture, combines and plants, big stuff.
Yeah, we want to talk about that actually, because there's a lot of education that you can help us fill gaps to fill with us. But before we jump off of this CBD topic, because it's something that Max and I have opinions on, but because the CBD sort of popped up and people started growing it without buyers and farmers are stuck with this stuff, some business owners were being creative and turning the CBD into THC and getting people high. What do you think about that? Do you think that's a good thing for the industry? Tell me about it.
Well, I understand that farmers need to make money, so I'm not begrudging any farmers who are making money from the Delta-8 thing, but that's a problem for the hemp industry. Like the hemp industry has done all of this work for years saying hemp isn't marijuana, it's not going to get you high, but then suddenly there's this loophole that, through some creative chemistry, you can now get high from hemp. It's unfortunate. I think it really reflects bad regulations. There's still a lot of work to be done in federal regulations and state regulations. And I think Delta 8, Delta 10, Delta 16, all of those sort of synthetic THCs are not good.
Yeah, we have opinions about that too. The problem is that, the industry, we're all for reasonable regulation, and what you really want to protect yourself against is against the nefarious players. So people who mislabel things, people who are, for whatever reason, taking potential customers in a direction that they don't want to go. So we completely echo that. And I hear you. The bigger message is the hemp plant. The bigger message is the cannabis plant in general and what it can do for people overall. So let's step away a bit from the CBD topic and let's move into
Before we move, can I add one thing about CBD? So there's some research that was done by, I think, New Frontier Data that shows that CBD users are twice as likely to buy other hemp products, whether it's food or, other products, than non-CBD users. So that's awesome, So
true statement.
That's another reason I love CBD, because it's sort of, evangelizing the hemp plant. So we need that.
Indeed, I walk around with a hemp mask now, when I need it.
Right.
Yeah.
I even have a favorite CBD company. Maybe that's...
I know who it is. It's Max and Stevens, clearly. I mean, who else could it be?
No, you can tell us your favorite company.
No, you're all right.
My local CBD farm is Wild Fox Provisions. They make great products, family-run business, really great people. So that's who I use. But I think that's the great thing about CBD farms is that you can find a local farmer and who's vertically integrated. Maybe this is counter to your message, but I love what you guys are doing.
Well, it's a plant, right? And what we support is the plant. We actually, a lot of people, we do run a business, obviously, and we provide a product because it's hard to find a tested, validated product in the industry. They say 80% of the stuff is not what it says on the label. But we advocate, and we want people to be able to grow it themselves. I mean, this is nature we're talking about. Obviously we're here to help, but we're not here like a lot of the other people are just a profit. Obviously, this is a movement that we want to help with. But let's move on now, because I know a lot of times CBD does take a lot of the topics. But for this episode, Eric, we want to hear about this mission to uncover what's going on with the grain and educate us, because let's talk about the grain industry first, if you're okay with that. And just fill us in, like, what are the commercial uses for hemp grain?
All right, so just to make sure people understand, when we say grain, we mean the seeds, right? This plant, certain varieties will produce lots and lots of seeds, and it's a superfood, right? It's super high in protein. It's got this great omega 3, 6, 9 profile, like amino acids. It's absolute superfood. You can crush it for oil, so you can get hemp oil from it. And when you crush it for oil, the byproduct of that is called cake, and it's the outer shell of the seed, and that can be used in food. That can be crushed into flour. That can be fed to animals. But then also you can de-hull the hemp seed, and those are the hemp hearts. Again, super high in protein, excellent omega profile, just absolute superfood.
Now, the oil, is that what's the oil used? Is that like oil for your car or oil for a salad? What's the oil used for?
A culinary oil.
Okay.
You can use it like you would olive oil. There's actually, in some cultures, they take a lot of fish oil. And I've heard that some people are now turning to hemp oil to replace fish oil because of the toxicness of the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
So now, like, you can't get, healthy stuff from certain fish oils, but you can get that from, healthily grown hemp plants.
Good to know.
So the first stop on the grain part of our tour was in Carrollton, Kentucky. We visited Victory Foods, and they're a B2B company, so they make hemp ingredients to then sell to other companies. But they do hearts, they do oil, they make a superfood. When I was in Montana a few weeks after my visit in Kentucky, some of the guys from Victory Hemp were out there, and the food scientist Ben Raymond from Victory, he said something that stuck with me. He's like, we're making food, we're not making edibles, mm-hmm. right? Because I guess part of the conversation there was, why is the grain and fiber side of the industry being sort of regulated like they're CBD companies? Because they're all still required to test for THC, but there's no THC in seeds. So,
and some people may not know that is actually the varieties that are grown specifically for seed and for fiber. They're different. They're different varieties of the plants. They don't have the richness of the CBD and cannabinoids in them. So it is a different plant, really.
Yeah, I mean,
it's grown different. It's harvested different, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So, everyone, I think, can sort of picture the Christmas tree shape of CBD plants. They look like marijuana plants. But for grain varieties, they're sort of low, and they're got big seedy heads. They grow lots of seeds. The fiber varieties can get super tall. You grow them close together, and you can get plants that are 20 feet high. And so, very different from the way CBD is grown.
So you touched on fiber. It's a great transition because we were going to ask you about that next. So from the fiber perspective, talk to us about that and some of the places that you visited. And how is that different?
Sure. And then we can talk about the fiber grain dual variety.
There you go.
There are some varieties that do both. Mm-hmm. The fiber industry is super exciting to me because you can make almost anything out of it. Like, think of anything made out of plastic now. You could make bioplastics. They call them bio-based polymers. There's a company in Kentucky making wood out of hemp. They press hemp stalks together with some glue, and they make boards out of it. One of the most exciting things to me is the hemp hurd. That's the inner core of the hemp stalk, can be used as a building material. You mix it with lime and water, and it becomes this like mold-resistant, fire-proof plaster almost that you can make houses out of. It's got like a great R value, insulation-wise. It's amazing. It looks great too. And
you saw one on your road trip, didn't you? A recording studio or something?
Two on the road trip, but I've seen several others too in my time reporting on hemp. We stopped in Rapid City, South Dakota, where they're working on a recording studio / music venue that's made out of hempcrete. And
that's cool.
You go in there, and like when you walk into a room that's got hemp walls, it feels different. Like, it feels fresher. Like, there's something about the way the lime interacts with the hemp hurd that it's like this breathable space. It does something too, I think, with the humidity, and when you walk into a room that's made out of hempcrete, you just immediately feel the difference with all of your senses. So we saw that there in South Dakota, and then our very last stop was in western Pennsylvania in the town of Newcastle, where there's something called the Project PA Hemp Home. And there's a company that makes housing for disabled people. And so they're trying to figure out a way to sort of revitalize the local economy, help agriculture, and provide housing for disabled people. And their first prototype is this home. It's made out of hemp. It's hemp on the outside, hemp on the inside. It's going to have hemp wood flooring. That company I mentioned in Kentucky is making the flooring for the house. And it's really amazing when you think that we could be growing houses, in our farm fields locally. And, you think of new construction now and how much, petrochemicals are used for, the Tyvek and all of the other sorts of things. And we import, the drywall from who knows where. And new housing has a great big carbon footprint, but hempcrete housing has a much smaller, more localized, it's sort of better for the local community. So that's exciting.
Yeah, new housing has a big lobby too. I think they definitely do a lot of that. So the question I have is, I've been hearing about hemp since I was a kid, and been hearing about the destruction of the planet since I was a kid, and here we are, right? Not kids anymore. Planet is more destroyed than ever, and hemp's still not everywhere. What's the bottleneck, Eric? What did you find out there?
There's a few bottlenecks. The main one is the 80 years of prohibition. That did not help.
That's
there are places in the world where they didn't stop hemp production. Mm-hmm. China, Romania, Poland, Russia. So it's still happening out there. But if we had been allowed to do this in the 70s, who knows where we'd be now. But so that's one thing. The other bottleneck is processing. Once you grow the plant and you chop it and you dry it, and you have to do something to it before it becomes a raw material for manufacturing. And usually that's a decortication process. So the hemp stalks are, long, fibrous with that woody core. They sort of have to be sort of like crushed up and separated. So they're then separated into the fiber and then the hurd. And there are machines that do that. I've seen them. I saw a company in southern Colorado called Formation Ag, where they build decordicators. And, I saw it in action. They have these big, bales of hemp rolling into this machine, and it almost looks like a Rube Goldberg contraption. But, I'm not a
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, we know. But it's like going through and things going over there and this, and it was amazing because on the other side of that, you have this clean fiber coming out that can be used for any number of different things. And on the other side, you've got this hurd coming out that can be used for building materials, for plastics, for all kinds of stuff.
Hello and welcome back to Understanding CBD. Hello there, Max Sobel.
Hello there, Chevy Chase.
That was Holiday Road, National Lampoon's Vacation. Lindsey Buckingham, obviously inspired by Eric's epic road trip with his wife and kids for 6 weeks, learning about hemp and what the status is all around the country.
In an RV, sharing a bathroom.
Right. And I know, Eric, that's no that song's no Smokes at the Wawa, but but it's not that bad, right? Actually, we forgot to mention Eric and his wife. They do have a band together, right? You want to tell us about the band you guys are in?
Yeah, sure. We have a band. We're not quite sure what kind of music we play. We call it indie folk rock. But it's called Tin Bird Choir. We've been playing together maybe for the past 12 years or so. So, yeah.
You guys should check it out. That's Tin Bird, like tin roof bird. Definitely check it out. It's a lot of different stuff. It's very creative. It's all original stuff, right?
Mostly. We play live shows. We'll throw some covers in, but we're songwriters. We're
very talented. Yes, awesome. I'm a big fan, Eric. So I like that. Thank you very much for the work you do there. It's awesome. Keep at it. Anyway, we have a couple more questions as we wrap this up.
Sure.
There's stories of feral hemp out there, still grown, left over from what was grown back before the Prohibition. Were you able to see any on your journey or hear about any stories?
I've heard about it. I did want to try to find some, but by the time we got back to the Midwest, because that's where most of it is. It's like in Nebraska, it's in Illinois, it's in Missouri. And there's stories of, it's tall, it's big, and I have conflicting reports. Either it's left over from the Hemp for Victory program in the early 1940s for the war effort, or it's just left over from when it was part of agriculture back then. I did not see any, but I did talk to people in Nebraska who have it growing on their farms. And I talked to a researcher at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln who is conducting genetic tests, trying to breed the feral hemp from Nebraska with Canadian grain varieties, so they can create varieties that are stable for Nebraska, because these plants that are feral are used to, the light and the soil and the conditions in Nebraska. But then you bring these varieties down from Canada where they've been growing, hemp for grain for 20 years, and there's a difference in daylight, so they react differently. So you breed these together, and you might get something more stable that the industry can use. But I do hope to see feral hemp someday. They
Fascinating.
call it
ditchweed.
Ditchweed.
Yeah, ditchweed.
But feral in the sense that it's been growing there for generations. I'm trying to understand it, or it's just been growing wild recently. You know what I mean?
It escaped, production years ago, and because it's so prolific in its seed generation, hemp in general just it wants to thrive.
Like the Yeti.
It wants us to thrive.
Like
the
Yeti.
Sasquatch. It's alleged.
Big fan.
They like
so
to.
it produces seeds, they get in the environment, and they just keep going. They've tried to eradicate it, but you know how that goes.
Sure.
Oh, there's a war on wild hemp, and it's not going to work.
Right.
Reference any, government war on anything. Anyway, off topic. Back to feral hemp.
Yeah. Well, so that's great to hear about that. So I wanted to take a minute left or so we have, and maybe you can give our listeners some advice. And we have a different group of listeners, some farmers, we have some business and investors, and we also have just regular consumers that want to help, want to get involved. They know that this revolution's coming. Do you have advice for any of those three groups or all of them?
Yeah. If you're a farmer looking to get into hemp, contact your extension agency, or there's a lot of great national associations. The National Hemp Association, for example, you can become a member there. It's a great network of people to learn from. But really it comes down to education. Also, start small if you're going to get into growing hemp. Don't put all your chips on hemp at once, because this is a slow industry. For investors, yes, please invest in the hemp industry. We need processing capacity. So yes, please put your money there. For regular consumers, just be aware that we need to grow. We need to make our things out of plants. We need to capture carbon. We need to wean ourselves off of oil. And I think we need a renewable source of raw materials. And we have that does it have to be hemp? No, it has to be agriculture though. And hemp is just a really good solution there. It's an elegant solution to many of our problems.
Very nice, Eric. Thanks. Very well said. Go check out Eric and the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast at lancasterfarming.com. Click on the podcast tab and you're there, or wherever you get your podcasts, you can check that out. Eric, how do people get in touch with you?
You can send an email directly to me. Send it to podcast@lancasterfarming.com.
Thank you very much.